Good afternoon, and welcome to the University of Tasmania online series for Alumni Explore. Firstly, as a reflection of this institution's recognition of the deep history and culture of this island, the University of Tasmania wishes to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Palawa people, and custodians of the land on which we are broadcasting this webinar today. I pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. My name is Rob Blanford, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Relations here at the University of Tasmania. The Alumni Explore series provides an opportunity specifically for you, alumni of the University of Tasmania, for lifelong learning and inspiration. One of the greatest advantages of being a member of the alumni community is the ability to tap into a group of influential individuals who have vast global impact. This series offers an exclusive opportunity to connect with your peers, find among them innovators, thought leaders, and perhaps even potential collaborators. You are an important part of the fabric of the university, and that is why we hope to provide opportunities tailored to your needs, such as this afternoon's webinar. A few housekeeping notes before we get started today. Your microphone, camera, and raised hand function have all been disabled, so our guests will not be interrupted. But we do encourage you to ask questions of our speaker today, and this can be done by typing them into the Q&A function, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. We may not get to all your questions, however, a selection will be answered during the Q&A section later in this session. Finally, this session is being recorded for later access on our YouTube channel. On to our topic today. Fashion retail is arguably the second most polluting industry after the oil industry. So I'm pleased that we're here today to explore this topic further with you. We're lucky enough to be joined by an internationally recognized retail researcher and Fulbright scholar, and we will be provided with an overview today of the fast fashion industry, the extent of textile waste produced by fast fashion manufacturers, retailers, and us, the consumers. We'll discuss alternatives and actions that we as individuals can take to reduce the impact on the environment. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our speaker. Dr. Louise Grimmer is a senior lecturer in retail marketing and received her PhD from the University of Tasmania in 2015. Louise provides expert media commentary on consumer behaviour, retailing, marketing, advertising, and branding. She's been involved in over 600 media interviews across radio, television, podcast, print, and online media platforms. She writes regularly for The Conversation, where she is the highest read UTAS academic with over 2.2 million reads. She is also the retail therapy columnist for Tas Weekend in the Mercury newspaper here in Tasmania. Louise also has a great deal of experience working on the other side of the microphone or camera. She's previously at the National Sunday Afternoon. She was previously the National Sunday Afternoons presenter for ABC Radio, and she's currently the weekend news journalist and presenter for Australian Radio Network across Tasmania. And if that wasn't enough, she also runs the retail consultancy Shopology, working with government, industry, and retailers to enhance retail stores and places. We are very grateful to have her with us here today. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you so much, Rob. That was a really kind introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm really delighted to be able to present to you this afternoon, and thank you so much to the alumni team. I was just telling them they're the most professional team I've had in setting up a Zoom presentation. I'll get stuck right into it because I haven't got too long to present so that we can have a discussion. So I'm going to talk to you today, obviously, about fast fashion. These are the sorts of topics that I'm going to cover in the next sort of 25 minutes to half an hour. So we'll look at, what is fast fashion, and then look at the extent of textile waste that the fast fashion industry produces, and then look at the ways that it's bad for the planet and people, and then think about some alternatives to fast fashion and discuss the sorts of things that we can do as individuals. So I'm sort of pitching this at sort of the middle of the road. I think a lot of us have watched shows like the ABC's War on Waste. Some people are sort of new to this topic, as I was a couple of years ago. Others are much more experienced. So look, I hope this is interesting and informative for you all. But I'm just going to move my little camera over here. So if we think about, first of all, well, what is fast fashion? It's really fashion that is concentrating on rapidly producing high volumes of clothing. And I think that's sort of one of the key factors about fast fashion. It's about replicating the trends that are seen on the catwalks in major cities, Paris, London, New York, but also looking at the fashions that influencers are introducing into the market. So they replicate these trends and they use predominantly low quality materials, a lot of synthetic fabrics, and that's all because they want to bring these inexpensive styles to the public. So if you were thinking, well, how do you spot fast fashion? It's usually fairly low quality. There are lots and lots of the same garment for sale in different stores around the world, and it has resulted in this sort of overwhelming desire and thirst for consumption. Now, up until about the mid-20th century, we only had about 4 fashion seasons per year, and they followed our seasons, autumn, winter, spring, and summer. And the big designers would have their collections and they would have their fashion shows, and then we would see those sort of fashions appear in shops with a little bit of a delay after the fashion shows. And what we've seen now, though, is that during the mid-2000s, we really saw fast fashion come to the fore. Now, that's because manufacturing had become easier, cheaper. We're all globalized now. And what we've seen as a result of that is there are now about 52 micro seasons a year, or that's one collection every week. So some of these fast fashion stores that I've got on the screen here, some of them you might have heard of, some perhaps not. Shine is a big new Chinese fast fashion online brand. And it means that a lot of these stores are getting 1 to 3 deliveries of fast fashion clothes every week, which is just really sort of unprecedented if you think about it. These are the sorts of things that you might think about when you think about what fast fashion looks like. You can see in the photo on the left, they haven't even bothered ironing the the orange trousers on that mannequin there. But these displays would be changed, maybe every day in some big stores, a couple of times a week in others. So we tend to sort of see this kind of display, but what it also ends up looking like is this. So if you go into many fast fashion stores and maybe you're in the sort of discount corner, or you're in perhaps a big department store that's selling some fast fashion, often this is what it ends up looking like. And if we think about the countries that are the biggest producers of fast fashion, China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And China is really the world's largest textile producer and exporter, particularly in terms of apparel. And this industry around the world hires about 80 million workers, and most of them are women. They're from poor backgrounds, they're from rural areas. And as I'll show you later in the presentation, and as I'm sure many of you know, the conditions are not great for these workers, which is one of the big problems with fast fashion. So this is what we often tend to think about when we think of fast fashion. It gives people the ability to access all kinds of new clothes, new fashions, new styles, almost on a weekly basis. What I want to just say here very quickly is, I'm not, I'm very careful to, I guess, make the point that fast fashion is very important for some people who are on low incomes or don't have a lot of money to spend on clothes. Fast fashion can play a role. People who need to clothe their children, and it's very affordable to go to Kmart or Big W or Target if you're here in Australia. And so I'm not trying to suggest that everybody has the money to spend on slow fashion or more expensive clothes, but I guess this presentation is just being aware about the impact that this industry is having and thinking about some of the things that some of us can do. But the reality of fast fashion is really this. If you type fast fashion into Google, you'll see, numerous pictures that will show you the impact of the fashion industry. And I'm going to talk about things like deforestation and water and workers' rights and microplastics and those sorts of things. And I'll speed through them fairly quickly so that I can then just talk to you about some of the research we've done, and we can discuss ways that we can perhaps try and reduce the impact of fast fashion, but also try and reduce the number of clothes that are just sitting in the system at the moment. So here's some facts and figures. And as I said, I know some of you will be very aware of these. The fashion industry creates more than 1 billion garments every year. That's absolutely insane, isn't it? It's over 10 garments for every single person on earth. And most of the garments that we buy, research shows it's only worn 10 times before it's thrown away or donated or perhaps given to someone else. The problem with fast fashion, as we're going to look at in a minute, is that because a lot of the clothes that come out of the fast fashion industry are made with synthetic materials, it's very, very difficult for them to decompose. Some of those clothes can take up to 200 years to decompose. So when we look at those photos of all of those clothes that are on rubbish dumps around the world, this is a huge problem. It's going to take a couple of hundreds of years for those clothes to actually decompose, which is a huge problem. Now, this cycle is being fueled because clothes are becoming cheaper and cheaper as the materials to make fashion and apparel and shoes and accessories are becoming cheaper. That means that the manufacturing is cheaper. The prices fall, so does the quality of the clothing. Now, while prices are dropping, as we saw earlier on, the fashion trends are accelerating. And I really think that the internet and social media has a huge role to play here. I hope you don't mind me sort of going back to when I was in year 12, 1987. It was all of the girls for our end of year dance. We would go to the fabric shop. We would look at all the big pattern books. Some of you will know what I'm talking about. And we would choose the dress that we wanted to wear, and our mothers or a seamstress or some other relative or friend would make that dress for us. And we didn't know a lot of the trends apart from what we saw in perhaps a monthly magazine that came out. Now, of course, we're seeing all sorts of things available. The information that's available is just incredible. And of course, if you're a young person, it's very important for a lot of young people to fit in with their peer group. And so, the next trend is right around the corner. It's all about selling products. And so clothes fall out of fashion and you have to go and buy new ones. And the clothing that you've bought the week before might be disposed of very quickly. Just some statistics from America, and then I'll show you some Australian statistics. The average American throws away around 37 kilos of clothes every year. That's a huge amount of clothing. Globally, 92 million tonnes of just textile waste. Now, that's the equivalent to a rubbish truck full of clothes going to landfill every second. These statistics are quite shocking, and I know we've seen them on ABC War on Waste, but it's still a huge, huge problem. By 2030, we're expected to be discarding 134 million tonnes of clothing. Now, Australia is the second highest consumer of textiles per person in the world after the US. I actually found that quite shocking. I thought it might have been the UK or another country. We consume about 27 kilos of new clothing every year. And very scarily, we get rid of about 23 kilos, which goes to landfill every year. And just take a minute to do this. Perhaps when you're finished watching this presentation, go and have a look in your wardrobe and count up how many pairs of jeans you've got. Some of us keep jeans from when we were a smaller size or a larger size, and count up how many pairs you've got. The other thing you do is have a look at how many pairs of shoes you've got in your wardrobe. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has lots and lots, but the research shows that Australians really do have way more clothes than they actually wear, than they actually need. So this is a fashion system that is worth $450 billion of textiles thrown away every year. And this figure here is really shocking because this doesn't take into account clothes that are recycled or donated. This is the amount of money that is spent on clothes that are actually thrown away every year. So this is a huge, huge problem. It goes to landfill, where it sits there often for 200 years before it decomposes, or it gets incinerated, which obviously has its own problems. And you can see, there are young children and people working in rubbish dumps in these areas, and we'll have a look at some of the problems to do with that just in a moment. Here are some more images that I think are just really so awful. And it's not the kind of images we think of when we think of the glamorous fashion industry or the trendy fast fashion industry or the marketing that we see from retailers and fashion brands. But this is what happens to clothes that are discarded and not wanted because we really do have too many. Fast fashion and the oil industry are the world's largest polluters, and really we have to do something about making a change. Now, I'll go through this next section fairly quickly. I want to look at some of the impact on water, microfibers and plastics, greenhouse gases, deforestation, toxins, and of course, human rights. So first of all, let's have a look at some of these awful images about the impact that fast fashion has on water. Now, I've got a few words on these slides, so I do apologise, but I prefer to read, sort of have my mind going rather than read from notes, but I won't read these word for word, obviously. But obviously, fast fashion has a huge impact on waterways around the world. It takes 200 tonnes of fresh water to dye and finish just 1 tonne of fabric. And the problem is, apart from that, is that untreated toxic wastewater ends up in the waterways and goes out into the sea. This textile wastewater contains awful substances, so toxic substances, arsenic, lead, mercury, which are obviously very harmful for people, but also for aquatic species. It gets dumped directly into rivers. You can see that information there about Bangladesh. The tanneries in Bangladesh dump about 22,000 tonnes of toxic wastewater straight into their waterways every year. And it's obviously polluting not only the people who live along those riverbanks, the animals that live along those riverbanks, but then it runs out into the sea and pollutes the sea as well. The other issue is that a lot of the materials that are used in fast fashion are microfibers or microplastics. So I've got some pictures here on the screen just to show you just how tiny these fibers are. And microfibers are a little plastic-based thread. Now, they're thinner than a human hair, and they a lot of these products that we buy actually shed these microfibers during their lifetime. So every time you wear some clothes that are made from this material, or when you put them in the washing machine, all of these little microfibers and little bits of plastic come off. Now, the problem is that the shape of that material, just to go back there, you can see that sort of blown up. It's like a little sponge. And what they do is they actually suck in a lot of those chemical pollutants, and some of these are obviously carcinogenic. And when we wash our clothes, so if you're wearing polyester and nylon, every time you wash those clothes, you're shedding about 700,000 microfibers. Now, this obviously goes into the waterways. Fish eat these little microfibers, microplastics, and then, of course, we eat the fish. So there's a whole cycle of toxicity that's going on through clothes that are made from fabrics like polyester and nylon. So every time we wash our clothes, we release these microfibers. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't actually realize about the materials that a lot of these clothes are made from. Just keeping my eye on the time to make sure I'm not going over too long. The other thing, of course, is greenhouse gases. And we know that Greenpeace has said that if the demand for fast fashion keeps growing at its current rate, the total carbon footprint of clothing is going to be around 26% by 2050, which is really unnecessary, and we need to do something about it. Now, that's because think of all of the activities that go on in the manufacturing and supply of these fashion items, the production, the manufacturing, the transporting these millions of garments that are produced obviously uses a lot of energy. The synthetic fibers that the clothes are made from come from fossil fuels. And the countries that we looked at earlier, China, Bangladesh, and India, they are powered by coal, and they are making the majority of fast fashion clothes. The other issue is deforestation. We know that fast fashion harms things like the soil, woodlands, and entire ecosystems in many places around the world. And that's because a lot of those natural resources are removed to make garments and to supply the materials for fast fashion. I think that's one aspect that a lot of us tend not to sort of think about. But if you think the animals that we use for wool, we have overgrazing in pastures, and that leads to obviously a lot of these problems that I've got on the screen there. There are a lot of chemicals that are used in the production of fibres, such as cotton, and think about rayon and viscose. These are wood-based fibres. They cause mass forestation as well. And we, of course, chop down, thousands of hectares of endangered species, ancient rainforests, and these are replaced by plantations, which again feed into this system. I hope I'm not depressing you too much. We'll have some solutions coming up soon. The other problem, of course, is all of the chemicals that go into textile production at every sort of stage of the manufacturing and production process. Some of these things, silicon waxes, petroleum, softeners, flame retardants, ammonia, and formaldehyde. And when we get hot or we perspire, that actually increases the absorption of things like formaldehyde, the residues, into our bodies, which is a pretty scary thing as well. So these toxins are present when we buy and wear clothes. Greenpeace ran a campaign called the Detox Campaign. They found 11 chemicals present in clothes production that cause cancer and can disrupt our endocrine system or our hormonal system. Other studies have found chemicals that are in pajamas. You all know we wash our clothes when we first get them because they have got chemicals in them that make them look nicer in the store. They were found in urine samples, and they hadn't been worn for very long. So this is all something that, I think a lot of us don't tend to think about. And finally, the other issue I just wanted to touch on was human rights. And I've got some pictures and some quotes here about the people who work in this industry and create all of these types of clothes. As I said, usually women from poor backgrounds, they work unbearably long working hours. They don't get paid very well. You think about if you go into Big W and there's a $3 t-shirt there, and you think about the supply chain that has come through and all of the organisations and people that need to be paid along the way for that $3 t-shirt, you can imagine what the person who made that t-shirt has been paid. The other issue is that a lot of the workplaces are extremely hazardous. They don't have the workers' protections in place that we enjoy here in this country. Less than 2%, fewer than 2% of people who make clothes actually earn a living wage. And a 14 to 6 hour day is what a lot of people are working. Now, the other day I stayed up for 19 hours. I got up at 3:30 in the morning and I went to bed at 10:30, and I was exhausted, and I wasn't working for all of that time. So this is, we don't tend to think about the actual physical stress that these people are working under. You can see the hours per week, and a lot of them don't even have a weekend. They actually work 7 days a week. You can see here on the top right-hand side, someone might be paid 60 cents to make a dress, and then of course it's sold for about $50. So you can see that all of the money that's coming in, the revenue and the margins, etc., are not going back to the workers. You can see all of the costs there on that breakdown costs of a t-shirt. And you think about that $3 t-shirt, that's obviously come from a European country, but think about that $3 t-shirt that you might see in Big W. The other thing that I mentioned just earlier is really unsafe working practices. Now, this is the Rana Plaza in Bangladesh, and in 2013 it collapsed. The buildings are very hazardous that a lot of these factories are in, and this disaster was an 8-story commercial building. It had 5 garment factories in it. Now, these garment factories were making clothes for major retail brands that are sold in, a lot of Western and European countries. 1,136 people were killed and many hundreds more were injured. And that's because the factory was not constructed properly. There are not the checks and balances in place for these workers. They are seen to be expendable. So not only are the conditions terrible, but you're also actually, at risk of perhaps being badly injured or losing your life. Now, there are a lot of campaigns going on around the world where organisations are trying to highlight this issue and getting consumers to think much more deeply about where our clothes actually come from and who's made them. You can see there was a clean clothes campaign. You can see some of these quotes from workers here. I mean, they're just heartbreaking, and no one should have to work like this, particularly not for clothes. And so we're going to have a look at a moment in some of the things we can do. One of the things that you'll see on that right-hand box there is that brands need to really be much more transparent about their supply chains. And we are seeing a lot of brands starting to do this, but there is so much more room for improvement. People need to know where clothes come from and under what circumstances they're produced. Now, some of this information is being used in marketing campaigns, but as I'll show you in a moment with some research that we've done, there are still problems with getting consumers who actually know about these problems, but then still go and buy these fast fashion items. So let's look first at what some of the alternatives are to fast fashion. And I'm hoping that this will sort of spark our conversation in a moment. But there are lots of things that many of us can do. And as I said at the start, it's not for everyone. And I think we do need to be aware of that. But there are lots of things we can do. Charity stores have really become much more, I'm going to use the word acceptable these days. They are used by lots and lots of particularly younger shoppers. A lot of my students that I teach are about sort of 21, 22 years old, and many of them don't buy new clothes at all. They go to charity stores, they go to fashion pre-loved markets, and they wouldn't dream of going to buy new clothes. Now, some of that comes down to money, but a lot of it comes down to really being very mindful of the environmental and human impact of new fashion. And I guess I just make this point: if you're in town or somewhere soon, and you just look in a mid-range fashion store or a fast fashion store, and just look at the amount of clothes that are in that store, there are way more clothes than any of us need. I think if, we really don't need to buy any more clothes, but of course we do. General secondhand stores are a great place to pick up things. Consignment stores, we've got some really great consignment stores here in Tasmania. If you're in Tasmania, if you're elsewhere watching this, these are really coming to the fore. Pre-love markets that are on every weekend are incredibly popular. And of course, we've got online stores. Depop, I've got a little comma there. I obviously meant to put in something else. Vestiaire is another one. These are becoming incredibly popular for people to sell clothes and to buy clothes as well. Obviously, for a long time, people have engaged in this sort of activity on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. There are swap meets, friends groups hold these sorts of things. You could sew or make your own, and Rob and I have been talking about this, and I'm sure we'll talk about it with all of you in just a moment. People who can afford to buy sustainable or ethical clothing brands. And we obviously need a lot more research into sustainable fibres and production. And a lot of that work is going on at the moment. I wanted to just share this infographic with you because it's really interesting. What it's showing is that secondhand is really, really growing. And this makes me just feel so fantastic. I've done a number of interviews about a piece of research that we did, which I'll show you in a minute. But I just did an interview last week with Glynis Trail-Nash. Some of you might remember her. She was the fashion editor for the Australian newspaper for many, many years, and she's now freelance and writing a story for Marie Claire magazine about the growth in secondhand fashion. And the reason that we know this is really taking off is that a lot of well-known big brands, not necessarily fast fashion, but what we might call sort of mid-range fashion or mid-priced fashion, and some of the luxury brands are now starting to sell their own clothes secondhand. So they'll sell their new range and then they will take back used clothes and they will sell them themselves. This is something we've not seen before, and I think it really signals that there is huge consumer demand for secondhand clothing. You can see if you look at the right-hand coat hanger there, you can see, secondhand 13%. Off price is, for those of you who know what TK Maxx is, or TJ Maxx as it is in some other countries, Marshalls. These are new. They sell new products, but they're sort of season end. You can see fast fashion 9%, but it's smaller than the secondhand market, which is really fantastic to see. Let me just go to my next slide. So what can we do to solve this problem? I think the first thing that we've seen happening, which is really important, is just about awareness. So the fact that you're all here watching this presentation today, the fact that Craig Rucastle on the ABC War on Waste has been such a popular program, sparking huge conversations across the community, I think is really, really important. We all have a role to play in trying to solve this problem. It is difficult when we're dealing with some young consumers because, as I said, peer pressure is an important factor for a lot of people. But I think awareness, talking about this problem, highlighting the problems and the solutions as well. I think it gets very depressing when we just talk about the problems for, whatever topic we're talking about. What are some other things that we can do? As consumers, we have a great deal of power. First thing to do is have a look at what's in your wardrobe. Look at the clothes that you've actually worn. I think there's some, the figures vary, but there's some research that says we only wear between about 10 and 30% of the clothes that we own. Some people have that little practice where they put all their clothes facing one way at the start of the year, and when they wear them, they put them back in the wardrobe the other way, and then they go back the next year and see which clothes they actually wore. And if they go maybe 1 or 2 years without wearing certain items, get rid of them. If they're good enough to donate them, give them away to people. You might repurpose them or refashion them. We'll talk about that in a moment. Think about repairing and reusing the clothes that you've got. Buy fewer clothes, and think about some of the ways that you can do that yourself. And then there are lots of sort of other things that you can do as well. Try and find out about retail brands that are doing the right things. There are apps that you can get on your phone now where you can check retail brands and see what their performance is. There's the Oxfam Naughty But Nice list, which I'll show you in a moment, which gives you the big brands and how well they do on a lot of these factors that we've talked about. Sign petitions, get involved with trying to improve workers' rights, and give feedback to brands, feedback to influencers as well. If you're seeing these sorts of people on social media that are perhaps not behaving as responsibly as they should be, and keep this issue going on social media and in your social and work circles. I know there are lots of groups that are really into this topic, and it's fantastic to see that they're getting more members all the time. Now, just to end off, I just wanted to share with you some research that we did at the University of Tasmania. My fantastic former honours student, Freya Evans, couldn't be on the call today. I'm hoping she'll watch the recording. She did honours with us in 2021, I think it was, 2022. And she was a wonderful student that we had who was really interested in sustainability, environmental consciousness, and secondhand clothes. All of her clothes came from secondhand stores and Depop online. And I'd never sort of heard of Depop and hadn't really thought about this topic much. And she got me really into it. Anyway, for her honours, we did this really interesting research where we wanted to find out what are the kinds of consumer orientations that people who shop for secondhand clothes have. So an orientation is something that makes you behave in a certain way. So I think we all assumed that people who shop for secondhand clothes, we thought it was because you were environmentally conscious or you were frugal and wanting to save money, or maybe you were one of those people who was very nostalgic. So we tested for those orientations, and we also tested for materialism, fashionability, and style consciousness. And what we found in our research was really interesting. We found that people who rate most highly on the style conscious scale are more likely to shop secondhand for clothes. And style consciousness is very different from fashionability. Style consciousness is where you are interested in good quality, classic pieces that really illustrate or say to the world, this is me, this is my style, I'm an individual. And the place that you're going to find clothes that can do that for you are secondhand stores. They're not stores selling new fashion where everyone's wearing the same thing and you're dictated what colour is in this season or what colour's in this week almost or this month. These people are the sort of people you might be on this call. I'm imagining a lot of you. You know, when you meet someone and you say, gosh, I love your jacket or I love your shoes, where did you get them from? And they say, oh, I got them from the Vinnie store. They're secondhand. I get so many comments on them. So style conscious people are much more likely to shop for secondhand clothes. Now, we thought that was a fabulous finding and really interesting and could be used as a marketing messaging from secondhand clothing stores and from consumers as well. So we wrote a piece in The Conversation about our research. And you can go online and have a look at it, or you can just send me an email and I'll send you a PDF. But this went absolutely gangbusters in the media. And I did, I don't know, media, you know, radio interview around the country, just getting on and off the phone to the ABC around the country and also some commercial radio stations as well. It got written up in lots of different places like Elle magazine online. It's been I think Marie Claire did a piece, obviously the ABC, and it was reposted all around the place. Now that to me is great impact for this research, because this paper that we wrote here will be read by about 10 people, and you know, it's written in pretty academic language. Something like a conversation article and lots of media interviews and people talking about this, that's what gets the research out into the community. This is the Naughty But Nice Oxfam list, and you can see it lists some of the really well-known brands, and the further down you go into the red, those brands are not doing so well. This is a good list if you want to find out whether the brands that you like are doing well. And you can just type in Oxfam into Google Naughty or Nice list, and they do it every year. So you can see how your brands are going and maybe which ones you should avoid or contact. And we've written some other things about, we know sweatshop clothing is bad. We know fast fashion is bad, but a lot of people buy it anyway. And there's this article, I can send you a copy as well. This looks at things like, the intention purchase gap and how we justify some of these purchases that we make, even though we know they're wrong. And I am finishing up, Rob. And lastly, I just wanted to say, a couple of weeks ago, I was interviewed for this great new podcast. If you haven't heard about it, it's called I Heart Tassie. Now, full disclosure, it's put out by Australian Radio Network, who I work for on the weekends. It's hosted by Britt Aylan, who's a fantastic broadcaster, and she interviewed me about slow fashion in Tasmania, the antidote to fast fashion, but she also interviewed Kirsty Marta, who might be on this call today, I'm not sure, but Kirsty runs an amazing organisation up in Launceston called the Redress Hub, and they're all about encouraging people to repurpose, refashion their clothes, learn to sew, learn to repair, all of those skills that some of us have lost along the way. One of the nice things that they really do is they got a delivery of sort of ball gowns from someone who didn't want them anymore, and they rent those out to girls who might not be able to afford a brand new dress, or who want to be environmentally conscious. They rent those out for about $25 for leavers dinners and for dancers, and that's just, to me, a fantastic service that Kirsty Marta and her team at the Redress Hub in Launceston are working on. So shout out to Kirsty. So look, I'll stop there, Rob, and let you hopefully come back on. And I think I've left us at least 20 minutes for some.
We've got plenty of time, Lou.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lou. That's absolutely fantic.
I can stop sharing my screen. Would that be better? I'll stop sharing my screen.
Sure thing.
And then you can look at, unfortunately, you'll have to look at me. But anyway.
No, it's good to see you. Thank you. Great questions have come through already. I'm just going to hit you straight away with some of them.
Okay.
Elizabeth Ruthven asked, how should we regard woolen garments made in China likely to be from Australian wool, as China is a major purchaser of Australian wool?
Yeah.
What do you reckon about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, isn't it? Look, wool is obviously a good fabric, textile, whatever to use. This is just me, and as I said before, it's not for everyone. I try to buy products that are made as close to where I live as I can afford as possible. So if I'm looking at something and it's made in China, or it's made in Europe or somewhere, that is coming a long way. And as you say, Elizabeth, that wool has gone to China and then it's coming back to us. I would be, but that's just me. I'll always look at where it's made, and I do try to buy things that are made in Australia. I mean, made in Tassie is even better. That's just what I try and do. But yeah, this whole issue is what I would call a wicked problem. There are so many of these questions where we have to weigh up. Okay, it's made from a sustainable fabric, but it's been made in a country that's a long way away. And I guess, they're the things that individually we might need to think about. I mean, I know why organisations have these garments made in these other countries, because it's cheaper. I mean, that's exactly all there is to it.
It increases their profit margin, basically.
Yeah.
So as you're right, as consumers, we can put pressure on them to change that, I guess. All right. So question from Megan Goodsusian, what's the best way to start educating our social circles that have previously been quite stubborn in regard to recognising these issues? What do you think, Lou?
Yeah, so there are some really great, now I'm not on Instagram very much, I probably should be, but there are some fantastic influencers on Instagram that have these big campaigns where they basically are taking, the photos of themselves every day in the secondhand outfits that they're wearing off to work. There are a lot of hashtags that can be used, and of course they've just gone out of my mind. But if you have a look at that article that we wrote about secondhand being more stylish on the Convo, you'll see we talk about it, and there's a couple of pictures of these people. So I think if we can try and get the word out that secondhand clothes are fantastic. A lot of them haven't even been worn by the people who've donated them.
Yeah, they've still got the tags on them in
They've
some
still
cases.
got the tags on them. And I think also the other thing that's sort of very popular amongst friend and family groups is going thrifting on a weekend. So a lot of people get together with their friends and they say, right, let's hit the thrift stores. Maybe there are a few in an area, and put your finds up on social media or amongst your Facebook friends, or start sharing the word with these great things that you found. I've got an excellent little pair of boots that I just bought from Goodbyes, and when I picked them up, they were $60 and they were country road, and they were exactly what I was looking for that I'd not found anywhere. And then when I took them to the counter, they were 50% off. So they were $30. And I have worn them, and I've told everybody these are secondhand shoes. So just start talking, I think. Talk it up. Yeah.
I do the same. So I've bought suits, suit jackets for work. And I tell everyone, I'm proud that they're secondhand.
Yes, of course.
It's bizarre because people will throw away. I've noticed that people will throw away an entire suit because the pants have gone somewhere.
That's right.
And it's like, you've still got this beautiful jacket. I would argue that a really beautiful wool jacket with a really nice pair of jeans actually looks more stylish than a whole suit nowadays. It's actually more trendy. So
that's a really good actually that's really good, Rob, because a lot of the time we do sort of, I guess, tend to think about women and secondhand fashion because women do a lot more clothes shopping than men. Sorry, but that's what the research shows, and they also buy for the men in their lives. But that's a really good point. I know my husband usually buys 2 pairs of trousers to go with one jacket, and the trousers always wear out, and you're left with this beautiful pristine jacket. So that there's some good tips. Redress would like that tip. That's a good one, Rob.
Indeed. So Erica, in fact, Erica Noble, is there any movement on a Hobart redress hub?
Oh, do you know, I think, I don't know, but do you know, I've got sort of like a buyer's remorse because early on when Kirsty was starting it, she asked me to be involved with it. And because I live in Hobart and she lives in Launceston, and I was just so busy with, being an academic, I just couldn't do it. And now, of course, it's just gone absolutely gangbusters. So I guess if there were moves, we should probably try and get in touch with her and see if we can get these passionate people involved who can start something up in Hobart. But I encourage you, Erica, to contact Kirsty. She's a lovely, wonderful person, and she's a PhD graduate from University of Tasmania as well.
What's her surname again, Louise?
Marta. So it's Mate, Marta.
Okay, cool.
Kirsty Marta.
When we send out, we always send everyone a link to the recording, so we can put some of those resources
let's put some information about redress in. That would be great. And I encourage any of you who are in Launceston or going to be in Launceston, have a visit. I believe they're in the Quadrant Mall, so they're right in the middle of the city in a great location. So it's just about getting that word out, and being in a central retail location like that is just fantastic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll move on to a question from Ros Wren. I think this is a really, really interesting question, actually, and you will probably know better than anyone else about this. Ros is concerned with huge corporations greenwashing. So she said, how do you know that the Oxfam list is correct, is a good analysis? How deeply do they check people's credentials when they're in the manufacturing and exportation?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Ros. Greenwashing is a huge problem. And I think as consumers, we've all become pretty cynical about a lot of the claims that are being made, because, of course, you all realise now that sustainability is the buzzword. And sometimes it's not used in the most ethical way that it could be by corporations, and we all know examples of where that's happened. I believe that the Oxfam list is one of the best lists, because my understanding is that they go right through the supply chain and they look at all of the different elements of the right through to the way the materials or the textile ingredients are produced, right through to transportation and workers' conditions, etc. So from my standpoint, that is the one
they've done their homework.
Yeah, they've done their homework. But I know what you mean. You will see a lot of brands saying, we are this or we are that. And yes, you always need to take some of that with bit of a grain of salt and do some of your own research, I think.
Yeah.
But I do trust the Oxfam one, but I take your point. Yeah. Thanks, Roz. Yeah.
Thanks, Lou. We've got a question that was submitted in advance here. So I'll give you some background. So we've been joined today by members of Tasmania's Stitching and Beyond group.
Fantastic.
So I'm giving them a shout out because there's a few of them joining today. So they meet socially and they learn about textile art and techniques. Not all of it fashion, some of it is stitching as art.
Yes.
But nevertheless, they've joined us today. So if you want to find out about them, so they're at www.stitchingandbeyond.com. So the question that comes from that then, Lou, is there a growing phenomenon of people making clothes again in Australia? And then my follow-up question to that is, we've had questions like My Kitchen Rules, which has incentivized people to start thinking about cooking again.
Yes.
Do we need something like that on Australian TV, like reality TV about making clothes to make it cool to make clothes again?
Yeah.
And the reason I asked that question is we do have shows like Project Runway, but it's, it emulates the high fashion industry. Some of the clothes are very rarefied. It's a lot of stuff you wouldn't wear on the high street. So what do you think about that?
Yes, that's such a good question. I know we did sort of talk about this. And hello to that group. I'm really glad you're here. We need more. We need more groups like that. One, I just want to say for the social aspect, I think that's really, really important. I just did an article in the conversation about rise in loneliness, and people getting together over a shared interest is super important. But this is a great shared interest. I don't know if there is a huge rise in people making clothes, and I mean you and me, Rob, for example, or people on just sort of run-of-the-mill people on this call. I think there is a move towards reusing, repairing, refashioning clothes, for example. So I think that's definitely on the rise. I think if you think about schools, we all used to learn sewing. I'm not sure. Well, I certainly know it doesn't happen at my son's school, but that was a skill that we used to learn, as you know, cooking and sewing. And that's something that we don't see so much. I think people would like to learn to make clothes. I think we need more groups where people can go and learn these skills. We used to have great adult ed here that would teach you how to do these sorts of things. So I think it could grow, but I think at the moment it's more people thinking about how can I stop buying new clothes? Well, one of those ways is to repair the hole in that jacket that I really like, or to refashion this skirt or whatever it might be, and Redress Hub and other groups are helping with that. I'm not so sure about the sewing, but I think the reality TV show, that's what we need. Think about the Great Bake Off and as you said, MasterChef, the home shows, all of that has sparked a huge movement in whatever area they're in. So if we had just how to sew normal clothes that people want to wear, not Project Runway, I think that would be a fantastic thing to see. Yeah.
And look, I'll come out and say, look, I make clothes sometimes. The best resource, if you're interested, is YouTube, actually. So there's really good tutorials. There's whole influencers who specialize in teaching how to make garments.
Fantastic.
Look, some things are quite difficult. Making a pair of pants or jeans with a zip in is one of the hardest. Anything with a zip is hard. The easiest things to make are t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, or simple pants with an elasticated waist. But things with buttons and zips are always a bit harder. So
they're always a nice elasticized waist, or even just a shift dress. I don't know if my friend and colleague Kristen Harmon's on at the moment, but she sews something every weekend and then sort of puts a picture up on social media. But a lot of the patterns are fairly simple and they don't have zips and buttons and those sorts of things. Just lovely shift dresses or shift tops and things. And one of the things I would like to see come back, which we need if we're going to be doing this, is some more material shops. If you're here in Hobart, we haven't got a lot of places to go to buy material. There are places online, of course, but
Spotlight has really kind of sucked the industry.
Yeah,
it's cornered the market.
They're what I call a category killer. And I'll just say that I used to be very ambitious when I was younger with absolutely no talent. So I would sort of 1 week out of a big ball that I had to go to decide that I wanted to make a taffeta dress with, or shoestring straps and all of this sort of stuff. And my poor grandmother would end up having to fix my creations because I had a lot of ambition and not much skill. But I'd love to get back into it, particularly for good wear like evening wear and those sorts of things. It's lovely to make your own clothes. And the other thing too is you can fashion them to suit your body. You don't have to be dictated to by the fashion industry that says we must all be 5'10" and very, very thin. Most of us are not like that, and we can adjust our clothes and make the things that we know suit us and not be tied to fashion trends. We can be that style conscious person that I know we all are.
Indeed. Right, we're going to have to wrap it up there, Lou. So look, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really fascinating hearing from you and hearing your insights. To all those of you that put questions in to Lou this afternoon, thank you very much for your thoughtful and sometimes inspiring questions. To those of you whose questions we didn't get to, apologies. We will try and address some of them in the follow-up communication that we will send out with the recording of Lou's fantastic presentation. So once again, thank you, Lou. It's been delightful to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your attention. And yeah, that was really fun. Thank you.
Good. So this afternoon, we've seen a great example in Louise of the expertise we have here within our alumni community. So keep a lookout for an invite in your inboxes for another opportunity to engage with your alumni community at the upcoming 2020-23 annual meeting of alumni on Wednesday, the 15th of November. At this meeting, the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Rufus Black, will speak about the higher education reform process and what this might mean for the university and indeed for Tasmania as our island home. I will be providing a summary of our 2023 alumni programs, as well as sharing our future plans for 2024 and beyond. This will be a hybrid meeting, which will be held online and in person at the new River's Edge building, which is a great opportunity to tour the building if you haven't been in that space before. And it is a fantastic building, it's beautiful. The recording of this afternoon's presentation will be available soon via our YouTube channel, which you can access through the Explore website. And the link is now on your screens. As always, the alumni team are here to address any questions you might have, and you can reach us via the contact details that you can also see on the screen now. We would love to know if there are any topics that you would like us to help explore, or perhaps you're a member of the alumni community who would like to offer your expertise. If that's the case, reach out to the team and we will chat. This brings us to the end of today's presentation. Thank you once again for taking part in this event, and I wish you a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.